All right. Well, I'm new to video content, so I don't record my thoughts on stuff very often, but it's a feckin' long time until we get to the podcast, so I figured let's talk about MetaQuest Pro. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my concerns about it. This isn't a particularly structured little chat. This is just some of my thoughts after the first 24 hours have settled down, and we've learned a few things. First up, there was a little tweet that I put out that claimed that the Touch Pro controllers were going to last 2 hours, and that the Pro itself was going to be lasting about 1 to 2 hours. And while that first statement is true, the second one has been updated now by Meta after some reply tweets that we saw. I'm still baffled as to why this isn't on their store page, and I hope within the next couple of hours, the next couple of days, they'll rectify that. It seems like an obvious thing to me for them to just put out there. Doesn't have to be in your marketing trailers or anything, but as a spec sheet, it should tell us how long the headset will last. How long will the controllers last? Why does that matter? Well, this is why it matters, because if you run a headset off a battery, like I would intend to do if I had one of these units, what are you going to do about when the controllers die? They've got internal batteries. They need to be recharged. You return them to the recharging dock. They take time to recharge, and while you're doing that, you can't use them. So that's why I cared about it. So I'm we're all a lot better off now with a recent tweet from this gentleman, Boz, who's the CTO at Meta, who for his first time ever messaged me directly in a response to this tweet. And we have that here somewhere. Where have we got it? Yeah. Controller battery life, you can expect, is up to 8 hours. Can vary depending on use. We had some mentions earlier today talking about kind of interim use by John Carmack and Boz, both saying 4 to 5 hours was kind of their normal. So that's fair, and that's a fair amount of use. My concern was primarily if you've got this headset and it's designed to be a working headset. Look, our most advanced headset yet, a whole new way to work, create, and collaborate. And that really is. I agree with what some people have said in that this is the first step. This is a new foray into a brand new medium. And it's actually really exciting. I know some people take whatever criticisms you put on the internet and they come up to defend the new product or come up to defend Facebook Meta in their endeavor. They put a lot of money into this and they've banked their whole company on VR. So there's no need to convince them that they're doing the right decision and the right approach. But I think it's the thing that scared me was going back to the Oculus Go. When that launched, it was such a great... I actually have one here. I didn't mean to do it this way. As I said, this is kind of unplanned. The reason I had my Go out was because a gentleman who will remain unnamed mentioned the game Narrows to me, one of my favorites from Resolution games that is only playable on Go and, well, certainly not Quest. I think it's on Gear or something as well. But there are just a very few titles that only live on the Go, and I still like to play with that on occasion. It's nice. It travels really well, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, we're here talking about Pro, so let's stick to that. So Pro, its battery life is my number one concern. It is not the price, although, just for giggles, I'm not going to buy one. You might have seen the price there hanging out. It's 2,300 Canadian dollars, which is hefty. I'm not saying I wouldn't buy it for the right headset, but it would have to be my daily driver at that cost, as that's the cost of a computer. And it looks great. I don't like the front being a fingerprint magnet, but I think that's a necessity for the pass-through cameras. It's got to be a surface that the cameras can obviously see through for pass-through, full color pass-through. So that's great. The form factor looks comfy. I was speaking to a Meta employee today. They happened to be, how would I call it? I'll use the word interview, but it's not like a job interview. They were speaking to me on a topic, and they were saying they just got to try it out, I think at Menlo Park yesterday. And they found it to be incredibly lightweight. And I took from that meaning balanced. And it's a nice looking form factor. Apparently sturdy and solid in the hand. But the fact that it only lasts 2 hours before you need to return to the dock, that's a little bit of a concern for me. But John Carmack did say, and from personal experience, I can say that the Quest 2, a little friend, is at the moment unfortunately renowned for when I sit down to meet up and have a multiplayer gaming session every week. It's always got something to patch. Oftentimes it's multiple things to patch. And John Carmack talked about a update everything and then power off cycle, which maybe solves some problems. But what I don't get is at a point in time, my Quest 1 would automatically patch itself, provided it was left in standby or light power off mode. So without the power being completely shut off, 8 or 10 seconds, power button hold, the thing would just sit there, and you would it would just get itself patched. It would get the latest update or whatever. You'd come to pick the headset up, boom, everything's ready to go. Aside from if something had just launched that day, I find that the majority of times I pick up the Quest, it's got 2 to 3 updates that I need to do before I can get on with what I want to do. And that ends up costing, I mean, I've got high bandwidth broadband, but it still ends up costing 10 minutes, sometimes 15, before you get in and do what you want to do. So this new idea of pick up and drop, what I call sit and go, sounds great for developers, really does. I won't talk about the gaming aspect, as it's not, as we know, a gaming headset. But in terms of the controllers, it seemed to me very short-sighted to develop controllers that have a battery life that's so far different from what the Quest 2 is, and then not talk about it or help set people's expectations in the right way. The fact that the battery time is completely missing from the product spec. Yesterday when it was announced for pre-orders, people could go in and purchase it, and all it really says is the physical dimensions, the color. Like, why not stipulate the battery life there? Anyway, you've heard that from me. Some things that people were suggesting as we were going back and forth, kicking the ball back and forth, so to speak, on Twitter, is the idea of rechargeable battery packs. Now, that isn't alien to me. In fact, I've got a couple down here, which I use for my lighting array, which are just, standard form factor, slide in, recharge them on a dock, slide out again. Really nice to have something like this. And the person who showed this showed off some Sennheiser? No, SteelSeries battery packs that could be recharged on a station and then plugged into the headset, and you can continue playing on or whatever. So that works. That's certainly an option, but it's too late now for Quest Pro. I do wish that they would come out with, if feasible, given the internal configuration of the electronics, a version of the controllers, irrespective of how much runtime they actually get off of it, a version of the controllers that runs off of, AA batteries. I would really like to see that version, so you can just keep playing. Have your headset, for example, connected to a slim form battery that keeps you just being able to do what you're doing, whether that's, somebody like an artist who's working on a 3-dimensional sculpture in VR, a designer who's working on the latest model Nike shoe. Whatever it is, if you're in there and you want to be in there for 4 hours, 10 hours, 18 hours, whatever it is, I feel like that workflow should not get interrupted, and there should be a way to augment. Now, this being their first device, they're balancing a whole array of things, okay? So they're first balancing, of course, the look and feel, the form factor of the headset. It's got to look appealing so people buy it. I think they've done a good job in that, and I think this headset looks very attractive. It's not blinging, it's not RGB, and that's good in my boat. Actually, most of the things that I do aren't RGB. There's an LED light strip behind me, but that's just to make things look a little blinger than just some dead leaves scattered about some old, now archaic Oculus boxes. But what have we got? So this headset brings us a whole manner of things that we can do. This mixture of AR and VR combined together is a big offering because we haven't had it before. We haven't had something like this, not in this form factor, not in this price point. The use of the Quest name is a bit odd, I find. I find that like they probably should have struck out with a different name brand for their premium line, kind of like car manufacturers do. You know, you've got your Honda and then you've got your Acura. I don't know if I'm mixing there. Maybe it's Toyota and Acura. Sorry, Japanese car companies. Zim's not really brushed up on that stuff. But I do think that the headset is a very exciting product. The thing that is most exciting to me, I must admit, is actually the fact that they've got this, the capability for security at an enterprise level was really surprising in the keynote yesterday that ran. And that was like something that just dropped out. And a lot of people will like pass that by, I think, who aren't maybe working for an international company with hundreds of thousands of employees. But as a worker bee myself, looking at that, there's only a few questions I ask about full day VR. Number one, can I get my apps that I need into VR? The fact that we're getting Microsoft Office, Teams, the entire suite from Microsoft, and a partnership, an apparent partnership anyway, between these two mega tech giants, it is in equal measures awesome and scary because I just think from a regulatory perspective, you know, these firms are screaming at me at the moment, monopoly, monopoly, monopoly. And it's like, we're going to have to watch this space very carefully. I'm very grateful for people like, you know, Kavya Peterson, I think her name is, and Kent Bai, and there are several other names who like keeping a close eye on the policy updates, the rule books, general XR computing, right? Security, including information security and device security. It's very interesting to see what this is doing. Now, it's a device that is it's a device that's plugging into you as much as you are plugging into it. Because think about it this way. The controllers, you are giving them access to scan and item and object identify everything in your operating area. The headset is the same. That hasn't changed from the previous generation. You also are, not asking, but you are also enabling the headset based on a toggle to look at your face, chew down on your emotions, reconstruct your face potentially in the future for a future digital avatar. Also look at your work. This is something that I think a lot of people don't understand. And one of the reasons I haven't worked in this way yet. If you work for a large company and there's a lot of sensitive data going around, pointing your VR device at that trough of information is the current digital equivalent of what people have been doing in the last 10 years, dumping into Google Translate and thinking, oh, that's all hunky-dory. But if you take your proprietary internal company information and you dump it into Google Translate, you've just given Google something they didn't already have. You've given them knowledge, and that knowledge is power. It tells them things. And you don't know what they're going to do with that. You've just fed it into them voluntarily. And we're about to cross the same precipice. So you're going to have work that's secured within Meta's domain, with Microsoft's hands potentially in there as well. And what are the limitations in terms of their use of that information? I don't know. But it certainly seems to me that that information, again, like modern day oil, is going to be very valuable. And even if the information is hashed or mixed up or just big data that, is not specifically identifiable at an individual level, that still seems very threatening. Are we willing to pay pay that price for something this neat and this on the forefront of the future? Then I think a lot of people are going to say yes. The actual price tag of it, bit pricey, but I think it should be. Um, and then when it comes to the whole AR side of things, the mixed reality part, being able to see your actual environment, be able to interact with objects that are floating in your space, it's just taking me back to Minority Report. And that's very exciting because although this might be Gen 1, this might be the first step in Meta's tackling of the work environment, this is like seeing the first laptop. This is like seeing the first desktop computer or the first bring your own device, like a phone or something like that, because this is going to change how we work. And if it changes how we work, the inevitable result is our workplace and our work style will also change to some extent. Now, COVID's done a pretty good job of changing the world, along with lockdown, and teaching people what the power of decentralization is, what the efficiency of remote working is. That's something that I'm all too familiar with. But it's really interesting to see this play. And I think that for a device like this, once people get their hands on it, we're going to see the emergence of yet another awesome evolution of that software that lives in that space, not in VR per se, but in that augmented reality around you. You can see it, you can interact with it, you can collaborate with it. And on the collaboration front, for those who haven't tried Meta's Workrooms, Workrooms is a fantastic productivity app where you can sit in a meeting room around with other people. And one of the things that's really cool, and they tested it with the Quest controller, is you could use the bottom of the Quest like a pen, and you could write with it. And it looks stupid out here. But in VR, and when you can see a slice of your desk, and you can draw something and then show it to someone else, I'm telling you, it feels amazing. And so for this purpose, they've invented the nub, or whatever they call it, the stylus, that inserts into the bottom of the new controllers. And you've got full control. Even better kind of resolution and accuracy in that space. I think about Wacom many years ago. A great business that they did with drawing tablets and how much creativity came out of that. Being able to physically sign documents on your computer was pretty cool back in the day. Of course, now we have things like DocuSign and, digital signatures, and that's good enough and holds up in the court of law where it needs to. So this is more about really just the ease of input, note-taking, whiteboarding, right? Being able to communicate with other people in a space, share very easily what you were doing. I remember being flabbergasted, even with the pass-through black and white camera on the Quest 2, I had this little cutout beneath me to see your keyboard and stuff and see your hands. But then my wife came along and brought me, I don't know, a cake or something, a slice of cake, and it was just there in my virtual environment. So the combination of those layers is now coming home, and it's something that a lot of people, I think they won't feel the magic of it until they actually use one of these. So it's yet another step in the right direction. Great pitch, I think, from Meta. And I would just say that although I'm not showing it now, you can check out their keynote. The intro trailers for all of their products, their devices, the sound score was almost like trip hop. It was really low key. Awesome. Really good. The colors that they were using, blazoned over other objects. It was great. It was honestly their marketing department. Aside from this battery snafu, deserve an A+ on the report card. The only thing that I really didn't like about the event, honestly, was the Horizon, the bias to have to show Horizon's value. I think that was something they probably had to overplay, but I also didn't really appreciate that. Carmack was an avatar at a point. Zuckerberg was an avatar. Those were aspects I didn't really like so much. It was good of them to show us that, legs are coming and avatars are going to improve. And even some of the generated face models, which were very impressive, that's in the pipeline and that's coming our way. Meta's clearly at the forefront. Microsoft partnering with them is scary, really is quite daunting. to have an old giant join a new giant slash wannabe giant. I know Meta's going through some internal difficulties at the moment, as they seem to have ever since their Facebook days. But what I want is, I do want them to survive, and I think this is the right play. I think they're going in the right direction with a business featured headset. Start to differentiate between their product lines and to start to get money and investment from those other lines, because this is kind of second era, maybe third era VR in terms of devices, capabilities, and the new universe. But this is our new working grounds, you know? I think it will be actually still many years before I end up computing in this or even Gen 2 headset, you know, all day, because of those privacy issues, because of data security, stuff like that. It's just going to hold it up for people like me, which is a shame, because I'd love to use this all day. I might use it for a workflow at home at some point, you know, sit at home and edit a video or whatever, have a big screen up while I'm watching the game. I say that, I don't fucking watch sports. Not at all. And I think if you're paying $1,500 and then sweating to all hell in that headset, I don't know. I don't see this as a sporty device. I really don't. I mean, if you're going to risk killing something with your sweat, which does happen on occasion, I've had a few people short their headsets, then Quest 2 is probably a better choice for now, even though it's not the most balanced, and the Elite strap isn't elite, and has broken on me now 3 times. But I still like it. I still like some of the design considerations, the engineering that's gone into these products. I'm surprised how the Quest Pro was allowed to leak in the run-up to the event. I don't like a spoiled Christmas. I was a little bit sad about that. But look, I've spoken enough about this. I did want to, you know, give props to everybody who's been, you know, level-headed, even with, you know, my bold-faced tweet for some reason deciding to circle the sun today. And yeah, it's good to have Meta be reactive and respond to these things instead of Meta or Facebook of old used to ignore questions largely and not tackle those problems. So I am glad that that's been addressed. I hope people who use it talk about it, not just creators, but, you know, normal, everyday devs, people who are architects, people who are doctors looking at medical models. Just very curious to hear what a real workday for them looks like, how this device, you know, nestles into their lives, and kind of like the first like Apple Watch or even the first iPhone, you know, how that device, like what are its obvious limits? Because for me at the moment, the only real one, I think, is battery. I'm a guy who likes to disappear into my environment and literally once I'm in it, stay in it. And that would be the same thing here. So those are just a few thoughts and pieces of feedback from me. I think Meta had a great event. I'm still going to keep saying it as I think it is. And when I see something that's scary or alarming, then call it out. Because everybody's big enough to be able to take a bit of criticism and feedback. Yeah, that's about it. Thanks a lot. More interesting videos ahead, but this one, I just had to get this one off my chest and share. So, appreciate your support. We'll see you again soon. All right. Good night.